greatly desired a 5 teeth per inch handsaw, and I got one. But it took some work to get it into this condition. I'll show you the process that I used to get it from that to this, and this is usability, not really to any kind of pristine state. What I was trying to do is avoid soaking it in any kind of chemicals. And I'll show you why I was trying to do that. I was trying to preserve some of the historicity of the thing. But you'll see I was defeated in the end, and I had to soak it in vinegar, which did the trick. If you want to just skip right to the trick, just soak it in vinegar for 24 hours, and it comes right out. But I tried oil. Now this works with other metal tools in a little bit better condition, and so I thought I would get by with it with this saw as well. I'm soaking it in 3-in-1 oil. And see, that's what I'm getting after. That's the stamp. That's going to give us the D with the 8. The D is circumscribed around the 8, and I wanted to save that, for some of the historical value of this saw. It's a good saw. I've used it, and it really does the trick. So the iron brush there, the wire brush. While we're watching this process, which ultimately failed, but remember, this does work on tools that are in a little better shape than this. Let me tell you a story a friend of mine, a buddy of mine, told me. He was in the Army during the Iraq War in the early 2000s, right when the invasion began. And it's an unbelievable story, but it has some credence to it because 2 of his buddies died while they were doing it. They were an escort in the Humvees, remember the up-armored, if you're old enough, the up-armored controversy, up-armored Humvee. He was in one that was up-armored, and the way he says it, he kind of picks it up. All of a sudden, in front of him, the way he tells it, that's, by the way, 000 or quadruple 0 steel wool there, and it's getting something done, and this is getting some of the rust loosened up and some of the work done. But you'll see that I'm just going to have to give up eventually. Anyway, his name was Kyle Reynolds, a sergeant, and the way he picks it up, it's just like the Humvee in front of him just suddenly blows up or catches on fire, and there's this explosion between him and his crew and that Humvee crew, and that the convoy. I think, according to training, I'm not sure, it just takes off and keeps going, while their Humvee was slightly disabled, and it had killed the driver, and their navigator next was dying quickly, and he ended up actually dying in his buddy's arms. His buddy's name's Jenkins, and that's the point. This fellow's nickname was Jinx. I got the blade out there, and see, this is when I began to realize I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to have to soak it in something. Jinx was his name, and he got real lucky at the end. Those 5 bolts there, that's the main reason I bought this saw, because that is an indicator of some pretty decent quality craftsmanship. 5 of those things, and it really is a good saw. Right, so where was I? Kyle Reynolds, the Humvee is not on fire, but it is disabled. Well, it's not completely disabled. It can still go. So Kyle reaches up and pulls the driver out of the seat, and he starts to get it going while he tries to get Jinx to wake up. And he also tries the radio. Turns out the radio is dead, and there's no communication. So as Jinx told him, they're presumed dead themselves, because remember, there's nothing but a big explosion behind them, behind the people that left them, right? So they're presuming that Jenkins and the whole crew with Reynolds is dead, and they'll probably come back to fetch their bodies later. So Jenkins and Reynolds are by themselves, and they got the Humvee to go for a little while before the oh, see, look at, these things were tough to get out, and I tried real hard. The problem here is they're brass, and I didn't, or I think they're brass anyway. They're not steel, and I didn't want to bend them and get them all ruined that way, because you have to put it back together. And so I was trying to get it off, and I never really, well, I did get it off, but I never really came up with a satisfactory solution for this. So Jenkins, right? Jenkins finally figures out that they ought to head east until they bump into the Tigris River. They know they're between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, so they've got to head east until they can make some sort of headway there. Yeah, see, I finally did get, yep, I punched one through, and I'm going to get 3 of them out here this way, and 2 of them are going to be pretty recalcitrant. So they're going to walk east, and they had this long, meandering conversation. It's funny how, veterans will remember certain things. They'll tell stories in certain ways. And he went on and on and on about Reynolds did, about how he and Jenkins argued about shoal water, because Jinx was from Alabama and knew where mussel shoals were and what shoal water actually is, and how it is that they needed to find shoal water to cross over, and then they could head north and maybe find some sort of detachment that belonged to them, or they could get some help. They're talking about Mussel Shoals, Alabama, which leads, of course, naturally, 3-in-1 oil. I swear by this stuff. It actually did work. It loosened it up just enough that I could finally force this thing out without bending it. It got them talking about Leonard Skinner, and then they started arguing about whether Leonard Skinner was better for their songs or for their albums. And Leonard Skinner, then, of course, being a Southern band, they started talking about the Confederacy and so on and so forth. Now, Reynolds is from New York, like I am. Actually, he's from Pennsylvania, Pennsyltucky, as he calls it. And he wanted to prove to Jinx, that he could identify shoal water without having to grow up in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I finally got it loose here. And see, what you can do is you can stick this into a garbage can, or into a garbage bag. I chose a heavy-duty garbage bag, and I filled it full of vinegar and let it sit for 24 hours. A rule of thumb for anybody who might be a novice watching this: you need to make sure and account for all your pieces. Always take the time to do that, because you will be very sad if you don't. And there he is. Stand up straight. There you go. What I should have done was leave this in the sink and just used water and wash this all off. And with a cloth or with paper towels like I'm doing here. That would have been smarter. Nevertheless, you get to see this is a chemical reaction, and it did get all that crud off. For the most part, let's say 90%, all done. I'm very pleased with it. But I didn't get to preserve that stamp the way I did. I'll show it to you in a little bit here. So they're heading east after the transmission seized up on the blowed up Humvee, and they get into this weird landscape. It's full of these mounds, man-sized mounds, he called them, where it seems like the floodwaters did something weird with the ripple effect or something. It doesn't make much sense to me. I just have a picture in my head of these little domes of earth with grass and bugs coming out of them. And it occurs to Jenkins, hey, wait a second. What if there's a bunch of canals? They don't know that they're going to hit the river. They might hit a canal. And sure enough, they hit a body of water. And, well, body of water, it was a stream. And you remember, these canals are thousands of years old. Like the Sumerians are like pre-Semitic peoples that dug these canals. and they're all over the place down there. Is this the river, or is this some, ancient ditch for irrigation, And so they're following this thing and it is in the boondocks of Iraq. And they finally bump into somebody. And before I get onto that, here's the D and the 8. There's your lovely Disston Stamp. Sign of good quality, American made. Or is this made in England? Anyway, more oil. Can't have too much oil. You can see this was a very poorly pitted, badly pitted blade. And there's still a long way to go before I get all the gunk off of it. There you can see it. There's the D, and the 8 is inside of it. So you would say the D is inscribed in the 8. And that's as close as I could get with my lens. And that's a macro lens, by the way. And you can just see the ghostly outline of it. And I was really hoping to rescue that. Didn't happen. On we go. Gotta sharpen her up. With the blade off the handle, it's easy to clamp this thing in a vise between two boards. And that's kind of what I've done. And I'm going to wrestle with this. Come on. Five teeth per inch. Now for a 5 TPI saw, you really do need to use the big file. And you'll notice, this is advice I took from Paul Sellers. I'm really a fan of Paul Sellers when it comes to preparation of your tools. He does a good job. Notice how I've got the file set at with the top of it is completely horizontal, and it gives, and I'm fighting the rake. See how I'm fighting it? I'm trying to change the angle of those first 5 teeth so that they're not so aggressive, and that makes it easier to get a start. Now you've got the handle of the saw back at your ear, but it gives you a nice good start, and you can really control it when you learn how to do it. You can control it, and you get a lot of accuracy at the very beginning, which is awfully hard to do with 5 TPI. And then for the next 5, you tip it just a little bit forward, your file, and that takes a little bit of the aggressiveness out, but not all of it. So you can see how, and I ended up having to do this 4 times, I think, to get it the way I wanted to. But you saw what condition this saw was in. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, in my highly analytical musings, I thought it'd be a great idea to put the camera lens right behind the saw handle so that you could see absolutely nothing. But take my word for it. Eventually, I'm going to stand the back of that file straight up so that it is completely vertical. And that's going to give you the proper rake, and it's going to make those teeth that are 11 beyond, tooth 11 and to the end, a nice aggressive rake. They're going to really chew into the wood. And it does, too. This saw really does the work you want it to do. It will go through just about any wood that you want. So back to Reynolds and Jinx. They bump into this Arab who's standing there basically in the middle of this river. He's on the bank or this canal, whatever. They don't even know where they are. I mean, they are lost. They are really lost. And they're starting to gesticulate to the guy because he's just this big, happy Arab in the middle of nowhere, but nobody speaks each other's language. And what happens is that Reynolds is trying to ask him if he's safe. you know, if it's safe to trust this guy, which seems kind of silly if you think about it. And they couldn't get the concept, you know, they could get the concept of being lost, obviously being American soldiers, but they couldn't get the concept of safe across. And so what Jenkins does is he takes his rifle and he shoots it into the air over the horizon. And then he deliberately, you know, with great pomp and circumstance, he turns the gun over and he pushes in the safety. And he brings it back, or he flips the safety. That's a lever safety, I believe, on those M's. I forget which gun they use now. Huh. Oh, well, I'll have to ask him. Right on. So, and then he tries to pull the trigger, you see, and it won't pull. And he says, safe. And he points to himself, and he points to Reynolds, and he says, safe. And then he points to the man, and he says, safe. And the guy starts laughing, and he raises his arm, and 3 guys rise out of the river and start chasing these guys. And they were so surprised, Reynolds and Jenkins were so surprised that they let him take their Jenkins. They took Jenkins' gun, and the guy tried to shoot Jenkins with the gun, but he didn't know how to work the safety. Just like I don't know how to work the safety because I don't know where it is, because I don't know what gun they're using. I'm going to guess a flip safety there. And so they both take off back into these mounds I was telling you about, just absolutely terrorized by these 3 guys chasing him. And Reynolds says he got his shots off and killed the 2 guys that were chasing him. And then when he got to Jenkins, Jenkins had killed his guy with a rock. Now, that rock is an interesting part of the story, too. It's what makes it unbelievable. Because it's sort of like Jinx, bad luck, and, you know, good luck to find that rock. Well, look, I wrote it all up on my website, johndaviddukejr.com. It's a WordPress site. You can find it there. I am the wool-gathering woodworker, and I gathered some wool with that one. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can visit me over in my various places, but I'll be posting an update to this one in just a little while to show you how the saw works now. And if you want to learn more about that story and some of the other stories that I've collected and retold and told myself, again, visit me at my WordPress site, johndaviddukejr.com. Don't spell out the junior, it's just JR. So we're all sharp, and we're going to take our time and redo it, and then we'll saw some things. All back together now. My name is John David Duke Jr. I'm the wool-gathering woodworker, as I said before. It was good to have you along. I hope you join me next time.